script relatively that I have to read before the meeting starts. We have to take a roll call attendance where everybody says, I'm here. And we're instructed that any kind of action that we take where there's a vote, including a motion to adjourn, has to be done by way of a roll call vote. So we'll be calling around for names as well as taking votes to see that we're doing this legally. So keep that in mind as we fumble with our mute buttons, as we all do.
Here.
I see Bruce, Rob.
That's very funny. Thank you.
Good old Bruce.
I do that so if somebody's calling me and I'm like, I don't know Bruce Pittman, that way I can screen phone calls.
Genius.
Right. Be at two places at one time. That's always good.
Okay, let me call the meeting to order. Denise, this is the hit the record button thing. Due to the governor's statewide disaster declaration relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and current public health guidelines for social distancing, I have determined that it is not prudent for members of the Economic Development Commission or staff to convene in person for this meeting. Therefore, the members of the Economic Development Commission are attending this meeting by video conference. Those same conditions require barring access to the public for in-person attendance. In light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen to the meeting through Zoom platform or by telephone as indicated in the meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, tonight's meeting is being recorded. So then I'm supposed to do an opening roll call for the members of the Economic Development Commission. Rob Pippin.
Here.
Jay Levine. Pam Brown.
Here.
Mina Hall.
Here.
Mike Elliott.
Here.
Erwin Steinberg.
Here.
And for the benefit of the recording that's going on, Mike Elliott's present, right?
I am here, yes.
And Denise is here? Yes?
Yes,
Denise, are you
I'm here.
Okay, and Dave Motzbeck? Dave is here?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Anybody else who I didn't mention?
Mike Sorletto with the public.
Oh, I thought I did, but thank you.
Well, you had Mike Elliott twice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Mike.
Jenny?
Yeah, Jenny's
Jenny.
here.
Thank you, Jenny. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, and Bill Jacob is here too. So.
oh, good morning. First matter on the agenda is public comment. Any public comment? Member of the public, Mike? Or others?
Oh, looking forward to the meeting.
Sounds good. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 9 meeting. Any motions with respect to the minutes, corrections, comments? Thank you to Pam for taking up the pen, or however you want to put it, and following through on. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the June 9th meeting.
That was Mike. Is there a second?
This is me.
Erwin Steinberg seconds.
Erwin seconds. Motion second. Any discussion? Now that we're recording this, we can get real formal, I guess. Anyway, motion is to approve the minutes of the June 9 meeting. That's how I'll do this. Rob, yes or no?
Yes.
Jay, still not here. Pam, yes or no?
Yes.
Mina?
Yes.
Mike Elliott?
Yes.
Erwin Steinberg.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. This is real formal. It seems, the Zoom meetings are nice, I think, because they are so loose and whatever. And yet we got this imposed on us, so it is what it is. Item number 1 is an update on the contacts to village business people. I think it's not quite done. My question is, I've got another dozen people that need to be called, and I don't know that they're going to add that much to what we already have. And I would like to, before it gets to be real stale, get this to the trustees. Any thoughts?
So I can send everyone, I'll do it during this call. I'll send everyone, actually, I'll just throw it up on the drive so everyone can access it on our drive. But I've got all the ones that I've gotten done from people, and I got all of yours, Roger. I'm putting those in right now. But all the ones that have been called, or at least tried to have been called, are in here. So we should be, yeah, I agree with you that I don't think we need to go any further. I mean, I think at this point, it's probably redundant unless someone wanted to reach out or someone said that they wanted another call.
Is there any reason why we can't just send this directly to the various village trustees?
Oh yeah, totally. So I mean, I could throw it on the drive. So I mean,
In terms of privacy or any kind of regulation that the village has?
right. But I was thinking if we put it on the Google Drive, I think all of the trustees also have access to that. So.
But the
Right.
chances they're actually looking at it are, I think we do better to actually focus an email to each of them saying, here, take a look at this.
Okay. I mean, I hate to say it, it doesn't look very promising. Like there's not, no one really gave that much.
That's something in and of itself.
Information.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Someone was talking.
What if we did that? So Nina, this is Rob. So if I agree, they got to go to Google Drive. Just maybe send a group distribution list to the trustees, whatever. Here's what we did. Here's the list. Please take a look at it. But at some point they got to go there to go look at it and make it easy. And I agree. I didn't put a lot of information in there. I just put the basics.
I don't think anybody had any businessmen screaming at them that things were terrible or the village wasn't doing enough. And that in itself is something that I think if I were a trustee, I'd want to know.
Right.
They seem pretty mellow, notwithstanding their not so great situations.
I think they're positive, and I can only speak to the few people I talked to because I didn't get return calls from some, and I made multiple calls. But the ones that I did connect with, like even the folks that own the Dunkin' Donuts, they were very appreciative. So that much, maybe that message is just somebody reaching out. And I said, this is not a one-time thing. So in the future, so I think we just got to figure out how do we engage them as they get through this. But most people were very appreciative that there was someone, concerned representing the village. So it was a positive thing. It just, there wasn't a lot of ask I didn't get from anybody.
I think that was the general consensus, Rob. I think I agree with you that most people were appreciative that someone did try to reach out from the village. And then there were others, like for me, that there was just, no voicemails even allowed to be taken. Like there was like answering machines, but they weren't capable of taking any more messages, or if we left messages, they just never called back. But I know that Roger's most recent one, he called and like the phone was disconnected on one of them. So, it just, we tried. And I think that's kind of the idea, behind the call was just kind of a reach out, a feel good at the best case, it was a feel good, which I think, I think that served its purpose. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, Mina too, like what you're saying, the folks that are closed, that were closed during the time period we called, there was only so much you could do to reach out. And so, therefore, I think it was, it was a good thing, but it, it wasn't representative of all the businesses, but it was a good thing to the extent that, the community the business community knows we did do that reach out. So I think it served its purpose, but of course we couldn't get a hold of everyone.
Right. So
All right.
I'll put this up as we're talking on the, once I stop talking, I'll put this up on the drive and then I'll email it to everyone.
I mean, I wonder if we could just do like a short message rather than send the whole thing. And like Mina was saying, just mention to the trustees that the notes are archived in the drive, in the Google Drive, and they're available. And that we did do this outreach. Maybe we just talk about how we did the outreach.
Okay.
Executive summary.
Like a summary.
But like 3 bullet points should probably be enough, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
One other thought, and I think the phone calls were good. I know we have email distribution lists and we do that. I know from Stevenson High School sometimes, like when there's snow days or there's important messages during this pandemic time from the high school, having some high schoolers, is there ever a way, do we have technology that we could enter all those phone numbers in and send a quick message to 100 people? And I mean, I don't know if that, I mean, again, I'm not trying to get out of the individual phone calls, but if we wanted a very quick, efficient way to leave messages on phone numbers in addition to the emails?
No, I think that would be called telemarketing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't think so. No, truly, but we don't have very many phone numbers or email addresses. I mean, I'm sorry. We have all the phone numbers rather. We just don't I think an email would be easier, but we also didn't get very many email addresses.
Okay.
I think we got one. So
maybe we can revisit that point, Rob. Because you mentioned Evite last time. Maybe when we get down to things like the quarterly breakfast, when we discuss how are we going to engage people, maybe that we can try to determine how we're going to do that, and maybe do a little more of a specific outreach. But I think with some of these general requests, I think it's best maybe we just kind of leave it like we've been doing it, follow up when we need to follow up.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, unless anybody has some other thoughts. The list of leads, which is a work in progress, right? Mike and Rob?
Correct.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead. Do you want to sort of highlight what we talked about a little bit yesterday?
Sure. So, Roger, correct. It is a work in progress. Rob and I had a couple of conversations on this topic. We haven't put together a list of 100 leads or the top 30 that we talked about 2 weeks ago. We're happy to put a list together. We think it's more important, though, to, if we start outreach to businesses, to have a plan in place and a repeatable process. So, for example, we've heard stories about a business in Libertyville that was thinking of moving, and I don't think there was ever any follow-up on that. There was an Irish pub in Arlington Heights that was thinking about opening a new location, perhaps in Long Grove, because he wanted to build and own his own building. And I can tell you from my point of view, if I got into that conversation, I don't know who to hand that conversation off to. Is it Dave? Is it someone on the board of trustees to say, okay, what are the next steps? How do you go about exploring opening a business in Long Grove, right? I just don't have that background to answer probably a majority of the questions that a business owner might have. So one of the things that Rob and I came up with is we need to work with someone to figure out, if we get a conversation started, who do we pass that conversation off to once we get as much information as we can, and what's a repeatable process that we can use to kind of get information to a potential business owner who's interested in Long Grove. So maybe some discussion around that. The other thing that we talked about also is, I know we've mentioned maybe working with a consultant who has, or a development company who has a list of leads. and then the other idea that I think is a feasible one and won't cost much money is to join the Restaurant Brokers Association or some other restaurant association, because that's where we're going to find live leads, right? I mean, Rob and I can come up with a list, but we have no idea, A, if they're interested in a new location, and B, if there's any activity. The other topic on this is to, and we may be doing this already and I'm just not aware of it, is to work more closely with Lake County partners, because I think they're doing a lot of economic development for the whole county. And if we partner with them, they're likely to know of opportunities where a business might be considering moving into Lake County. And the more they know and the more we're on their radar for Long Grove, I think there's probably opportunities on their radar pretty frequently, and maybe we're not, you know, getting consideration for those opportunities. So I don't know who kind of, and I'm using air quotes here, owns that relationship with Lake County partners, but if we can further develop that and maybe meet with them on a regular basis to see what's in their pipeline. So I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but the bottom line is we need to fill up the sales funnel, for lack of a better term. And rather than just coming up with a random list, which we will still do, I think there's some value in having a targeted list. But I think there's better ways to fill up an opportunity funnel more quickly. And that is by, you know, networking and getting out when we're able to have in-person meetings again to see where the opportunities are coming from. Because so far I think they've been kind of random. And it, you know, if you have, Rob used the analogy of someone spinning plates on poles. If you've got 12 in the air, you're going to have to keep going to all of them and keep them spinning. And you're not gonna win them all, right? But if you only have one opportunity in the pipeline and it falls through, then you got to start the whole process over again. So I just think we need to figure out where we can identify more opportunities and then have a repeatable process to pursue those. So if anyone has questions, let me know. I hope that makes sense. But I'm open to answer questions.
So I'll pipe in here, Rob, a little bit. So again, it's easy for Mike and I to come up with a list of 100 restaurants or businesses we'd like to recruit. And again, I'll take ownership of even the Irish Pub. I went and met with them in Arlington Heights and sort of have, and again, what I want to be careful of is if we go talk to these people that there's like a streamlined process, because if you go reach out to them and then it's 3 months before you go back, I don't know that you get a second chance, right? So our impression. So again, we'll come up with names, but I think working like this, Chicago, I think it's called the Real Estate Brokers Association, has a monthly meeting. I'm sure there's Zooms now, but it's not just a list of 100. To me, they got to be realistic. You know, just to have a list is not very smart on our part, but vetted opportunities where we really would have a chance. Because I do think there's some restaurants that, even as crazy as it sounds, they'll expand after we get through this pandemic. Certain types of restaurants that are doing well. You know, a Portillo's probably will keep expanding because they've got new owners as a couple years ago. So, and not that we want Portillo's, but that's our thought is we'll come up and again, I think there's some centers of influence, like Mike said, whether it be Lake County partners or these real estate brokers, and we just, so it's not our excuse for not coming up with a list. We just don't want to come up with a list and then make a phone call and then have no follow-up after that. We got to figure out how do we streamline the process. So, you know, I'll give Mike Sarletto credit. I hear to this day, part of the reason Buffalo Creek Brewery is in Long Grove is Mike Sarletto. So we got to figure out a way to follow the opportunity from start to finish. And like Mike said, we're not going to get them all. In 100's a big list, but it should be 100 vetted list, and then figure out a way, how do we stay on top of maybe the top 10 or 20? And if we could get a couple places a year. So again, I want to get feedback, but we have no problem coming up with a list. But again, we got to figure out how to, from the time we make the first phone call to the email, where does it go from there? Because if we don't do it in a streamlined, organized fashion, I think we're sort of wasting our time.
Well, if you're somebody who's interested, where do you want to go? Do you want to talk to the village? Because the village can't sell me any property. The village can't rent me any place. where do I really want to go if I am one of these potential leads to come to Long Grove?
Yeah, so let's use that. Yeah, I don't know the answer. So, I mean, Dave and Denise are on there. Dave, what should we just always send them to you?
That's what I would suggest. I think having a formalized process in place would be helpful for everyone. And we are kind of the, I don't know if you would call us the third leg, but we tend to, at some point, be contacted by interested parties, obviously. And sometimes it is on the front end where they are truly first just interested in the community and don't have any idea what might be available in the town. And we can direct them to the website and property owners. So there is a role that we play, and then there's also the role with, what's permitted, what isn't permitted, how can we help them through that process if it's a user that we would like to have in town.
This is Erwin. I just want to comment on something Mike said before. Thank you for that. Maybe what we need to do is we need to have someone who's the champion with Lake County Partners, another one with the Restaurant Association, another one with the brokers. I think we need to target the centers of influence who will create leads for us. Their ears to the ground on what's going on. There'll be some that will just call, Village Hall and ask some questions, but maybe we need to break down this group and have someone champion the 3 or 4 centers of influence. And then the answer is, who do we talk to? They could start with Dave, and he could answer some questions, and maybe we need a flow chart as to what happens next. Who do they talk to next? But I think if we concentrate on centers of influence rather than, we need a breakfast, restaurant in downtown. That's great, but there's 10 brokers we're dealing with. Let's get the word out to 10 brokers. The person who works with the brokers, who maybe joins that Restaurant Brokers Association also. Same thing with Lake Counties, and maybe there's a couple of others.
Exactly. But I also think we'd want to have a trustee as part of that. It would be a thought, and maybe somebody from the village. So I've always said once a month, and I want to get Mina's perspective because she knows economic development better than I ever will. Would it make sense, even in times like this, for us to have a monthly Zoom call just between Long Grove and Lake County Partners to sort of update them on things going on and try to find some projects? Because I do think that happens, is that businesses call Lake County Partners saying, hey, we want to relocate in Lake County, and while they're not a real estate agency, they help them navigate that. We want to just figure out, how do we make sure we're on that short list, and is it something we want? I mean, that would be the first question. But yeah, I think they know of a lot of opportunities, from a restaurant to, there's a company called Rupert, which is a big meat company that came from the city, has probably 250 million in revenues, and came to Lake County. I think we just, like you said, we got to figure out how do we do that and have a really good working, but I don't think it should just be an EDC person. I think it's an EDC, a trustee, and somebody from the village helping to manage each of those relationships, I think.
So I think that's a good idea, Rob. So I do think that some leads do go through Lake County Partners, not all, obviously, but I do think that once we have a process in place, so typically what I would do when I am looking at sites and communities, and I usually start with the regional group. So Lake County Partners would be our regional group that we would go to, because there's no way I know every person at 50,000 municipalities and villages across this country. So I typically start with the state and then the regional partner that encompasses the region I'm looking at. And then they will then connect me to someone at, locations that they think may be viable based on the criteria that I've provided them. So be it workforce, specific type of workforce with skill sets, be it the availability of real estate that they specifically need, if it's industrial versus office. So I do think that from that approach, it's definitely helpful to partner with the Lake County partners as our regional focus. Now, with that said, I do think we need to clean house at home first. So I think I totally agree with Dave that he said, if Dave needs to be the point of contact, so that should be our process is if anyone gets a lead, we give them Dave's information, and then we also should direct them to other types of information that may be available. We can direct them to a website like, oh, look, this is what we talked about this years ago too. It takes X many number of days to clear permitting. This is the next steps you need to take, kind of like a flow chart, which we never did complete. But I do think that is still relevant, so that let's say we just get a call from Lake County partners and then it goes directly to Dave, or let's say it comes to one of us, we punt to Dave, and then Dave then leads them. But I still think, for me, I personally, once I get a contact name from a local level, I still do research on that local community's website first to see, so that I can do my data analysis so I don't go in blind. I kind of find out, how do all of the village trustees vote? Are they pro-business? Are they anti-business? I'll look at minutes from prior meetings for the last year. If I see anything suspect, like they're anti-business, I won't even bother unless they absolutely have the only viable real estate opportunity in that entire region. But if I start seeing that something is very anti-business, I'll make a call, but I also know that I'm going to be voted against. And so, we kind of prepare our clients for things like that. So I don't know. I still think we need a process. I think we need to we have done a great job and we've made significant strides on our website. And I think we're definitely going in the right direction. But I agree. And again, I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I'm just trying to give you, once we know what the problem is.
No, we want your feedback. This is the only way we're going to learn.
Yeah, but I think we're definitely on the right track. But I do agree. And Roger, you mentioned something about, well, what if the real estate, the realtor or the owner is not willing to play ball? What do you do then? And that's the kind of thing that we may have, 15 different available spaces, but if their price points, if their rents per square foot are not in line with everything else in the region, no one's going to want to look at our community. And right now, I think that is some of our biggest issues, which is why we have so many vacancies. I think we have a lot going for us. I think we really need to promote that our downtown and, all the things that we have done. We've installed sidewalks and lights, our bridge is being repaired. We're hopefully getting Lake Michigan water, just all these amazing things. I think we just need to highlight front and center on our, on the village's website. I think the historic downtown Long Grove Business District does an amazing job selling that area. I think the village as a whole needs to do a better job of promoting their self-worth, basically. We're so awesome. This is everything that we've done. Let's throw some more pictures up there and jazz it up if we could, because not that, we need to invest that much money, but, at least throw a couple pictures up of all the prettiness that, all the monies that have been spent have shown.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. So, and again, I don't want to always compare us to Libertyville, but when you go on Libertyville site and you go under business, it has a section on there. It says site selection.
Yep.
And development. And underneath there, it says retail centers, property listings, downtown sites, office buildings, business for sale, site selection, and development tools. So to me, and I don't, so I'm not saying copy them. Go ahead.
But that is what we need, because there's typically, I look for every economic development community that I typically work are typically, they're, a couple 100,000 people population normally for projects that I work. So, but when I do, there's always an economic developers, there's always a site selector tab under economic development. So it might be under business, it might be, again, depending on every community is different, but the site selector tab it typically has the available incentives, the available properties, kind of the processes for going through, and then, like I said, there's typically a tab for minutes of prior agendas, and then kind of their agenda, what their, kind of what the requirements are of posting when related to open meetings. So yeah, I think the Libertyville site would be a perfect one to copy. again, they have a lot more money than we do. And for us, because we don't charge a tax, you know, we're just short revenues. We just don't have, we have more projects that need funding than we have revenues coming in. And I think that's our biggest challenge.
But it's an interesting site. So Denise, I know you spend a lot of time on the website, but even I'm just playing around. I haven't been on their website for a long time, but you know, if I go under there, there's a section called what is it? Okay, major development projects. So it highlights all the projects if you have questions. So I think it's, you know, David's only one person, so yes, they can contact it, but then it'd be nice if you had a nice email. We could say, hey, let's go on here. So in a couple clicks, I know a lot about what's going on in Libertyville, businesses for sale, site selection. So I'm going to go play on Longrove's, but are we doing some of the same tools that they are or not?
No, I mean, we've tried. I think we're getting there because we do have on the Longrove's website right now. I mean, there is a thing for under business, then there is an economic development tab. And then under that, there is an available properties and sites tab, which is good because I think it shows, but it shows, we have our supporting documents, our marketing brochure is on there. And then, and then we have Jim and Dave's names to call. So there's a link to.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, available.
Properties.
So again, maybe whether it be Libertyville or in town, I think if there's a way we could make ours more robust, like Libertyville, because I just go available properties and sites. So if I compare that to Libertyville, it just gives me two names to call, like the site selection, available properties and sites. So let me click on there.
It sends you to the 8 buildings that are currently available in Long Grove under the lowest site. So that's good, truly. I think that part's really great. It shows what the square footage is of each of the sites. So from that sense, yeah, that's great. Now, again, like it shows the CFI property as the first one being listed at 150,000 square feet. You know, so I think there are a lot of great things that we're doing, and this was a great addition to our Long Grove site. So like I said, we've made a lot of strides. I mean, truly, I think in the last 2 years that we've done this, you know, since we've been in place, I think we've done great. And I think the little marketing piece, I think is really good from trying to attract retail. I do. And that's kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for commercial and retail opportunities. And I think that's kind of we have the demographics, you know, it shows that we have 1.4, we service all these, you know, it shows our average income, and it shows that the number of people that walk through or that are a quick distance, you know, from Long Grove. I mean, so we're doing the right things. I do think we're doing the right things, but we just don't have the money. If you want a robust site like Libertyville's, we have to invest a lot of money. And unfortunately, it's like, you know, Long Grove is like a small business, you know, they have to put the money where, you know, there's more like important pressing needs that I think that right now this may not be one of them, especially with the limited funding that is available, with the lack of sales taxes being drawn in because of the pandemic. I mean, but I agree. I think we've done well though, Rob, we really have.
Right. I think, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that too. I mean, I know we've talked about it, and you know, I like the Libertyville website. I've also pointed to Lincolnshire, and I think we have kind of patterned, you know, what we've done after those things, you know, that where we show available sites and you know, maybe one thing we could do in addition to that would be to, again, and I don't know who would do this or what the proper positioning is, but, you know, to also talk with the property owners to see from their perspective who somebody would need to contact to go further with it. And, you know, like get the buy-in more of the property owners, so they're like more into the process, because, you know, we're gonna, you know, we need that element.
Yeah.
Is there one property owner who's more aggressive in their marketing than the others who might be willing to just based on a small piece in the website say, here's why Long Grove?
I think CFI was an example, Roger, and that worked out, and Mike has done a lot of reaching out to them. And, maybe we do need to follow up with the property. I don't know. Dave, would you have an idea of who would be best for us to maybe start reaching out to see, who they would want somebody to contact to get more information about development?
Well, we have those contacts. Maybe if I sent the group some communications that I've had with people that are looking for property or for a building, and what I would refer to are dead ends that they run into, whether it's no response from the property owner or representative, or as Mina mentioned, the rent or the price, the value that they've placed on their property is just out of line with what at least this particular group or person might be available to swing. So it really depends on the user, which properties we're going to direct them to, and we usually will funnel it down with some pretty basic questions of what are your needs in terms of property, building size, infrastructure, and then point them in directions that would at least fit those basic needs of theirs, and put them in contact with the property owner or the representative. And it tends to be a pretty kind of quick bang bang kind of, here are all the people, and either they start having some success, or oftentimes it's frustration and they're not responded to, at least in a way that they were hoping, and then they will keep poking around a little bit, and we'll continue to help them with those communications. But ultimately, if the property owner isn't really open to negotiating or considering alternatives, that's where the projects tend to go away. And so there's not a large group in Long Grove. We're dispersed throughout the town, but you're really talking about 3 or 4 major property owners in the downtown, and then once you get outside of that, Sunset Grove is full. The Executive House has one potential site for office. The South 15 is a great opportunity. And then you're at Long Grove Commons or Menards, or you're looking at adjoining properties to any one of those. So that's kind of how we direct people as they come in, so that we're trying to focus them in an area that meets their needs. And then it's between the prospective purchaser, business, and the property owner to try to work out a deal. There are times where we'll reach out directly to the property owner and try to prompt them, because whoever is inquiring isn't getting a response, or try to find out more from the property owner, what's going on from their perspective. But those are the two. It's the user and the property owner where the bulk of those conversations are. It's really just putting them, being a resource to put them in touch with each other, and identifying what the village's process is moving forward, so that they have a good sense on what, setting expectations on what they would require moving forward if they're able to come to an agreement with the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question. Again, I know I keep coming back to the same thing. When I go on Libertyville site, and under site selection and development tools, because that's what there's a lot of links and it's good. Would it be a lot of money, a lot of effort to update Long Grove's website to that, because now we have a lot of places we could send people with a nice email to say, please go here. We'll still follow up, but again, in a couple clicks, site selection development tools, meaning you tell me, but I'm saying this is, I know Libertyville's bigger, I know they got more money, I get all that, but how hard would it be for us to mimic what they've done and have this be a lot more user-friendly in Long Grove? Doesn't have to be exactly like Libertyville, but I don't think ours is real easy to navigate if I'm looking for site selection. I'm comparing the two. So, I mean, those are just basic tools. We'll still come up with a list, but I don't think if I go to the website of Long Grove, it's real easy for site selection. It just looks completely different. And I'm no expert on websites or anything like that, but I can't imagine it would be a lot of money to go do what they've done.
Do we even know how much something, I mean, considering how much did we spend on our most recent update? I think it's a costly proposition, if I'm not mistaken. Because like I said, looking at the finances, I mean, I don't think we have that kind of extra money right now. I think for right now, what we're doing is, personally, I think that's the best we can probably do for right now until we get more flush with cash. Personal opinion.
And so that being said, I want to go back to a comment that Erwin made, and that's, can we decide if we're going to have people be, you know, kind of run point on, and if someone's already doing this, step in. Again, I'm new to the commission, so I don't want to, you know, reinvent the wheel, but can we have someone explore having a more frequent conversation with Lake County partners? Can we have someone explore or volunteer to look into this Restaurant Brokers Association that we're talking about joining, to potentially get some leads from that association, and just take some action on these? I think they're all great ideas, but we need to take some action on it and see if we can generate some leads on an outbound basis versus kind of waiting for someone to inquire about a property, because that's only going to get us so much, right? Even if we did improve the website, I don't think we can count on, even if it was, you know, quote, as good as Libertyville's, we still have to be proactive about going out and finding businesses that might be interested in moving to Long Grove. So I'm happy to run point on any one of those. The other thing I'd like to do, Mike Sarletto, I mean, your name keeps coming up as the person that was on point to get Mike Marr to move his business here. I know you're super busy. Would it be possible for you and I to spend an hour on the phone and you can just walk me through the process that you used? And maybe we can flow chart that and see if that could be something that's repeatable, right?
Sure, be happy to.
Dave, I know you're busy as well, but I'd like to spend some time on the phone with you. So, you know, I'll pretend like I'm a business owner who's thinking of opening a location, and maybe you can outline for me, what would I have to do to open a location in Long Grove? And I'd be happy to try and document and flow chart that. So that way, at least we all have the same set of tools that we're working from. And then if you know, one or two or three of us want to run point on building and developing relationships with Lake County partners and the Restaurant Brokers Association, and do some proactive outreach, I think that we'll start getting some traction with that stuff.
We have really gone far afield from the original action item here of, you know, getting the list, and I think that's great. But I think it sounds like we've come to the point where now we need to pick some new action items and say, where are we going? Do we keep this list of 100 or 50 or whatever it is on for a report next time, or should we switch it over to, all right, we have a report about? Yeah,
let's keep it on. And Rob and I, as we mentioned, we're happy to put a list together. I just think we need to do more than that, right? So 2 weeks from now, Rob, if you're opposed, let me know. But we can come up with a list. That's easy.
That is truly the easy part.
Yeah, and we'll do that. No problem. So you're right, Roger. Maybe come up with some new action items to take so that 2 weeks from now, we don't just say, here's our list. Now what do we do with it, right?
If I put down that in 2 weeks, Mike, you're going to report back about your discussions with Mike Marr or Dave or whoever it is and see just where it's at.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Well, I think that takes care of the process part, it sounds like, but I'd like to go back, a step back and talk about maybe for the agenda in 2 weeks, determining the centers of influence and who's going to own those from the EDC, and then getting one of the trustees involved in each area. I hear Lake County Partners, we need a champion, and the Brokers Association, we need a champion. I don't know if there's another one, but I'd like to discuss those and at the next meeting, and also make some determination who wants to jump in and really develop that relationship with them.
Let's just ask right now. Who wants to? I got an idea for Lake County Partners, but who would want to do Lake County Partners is who's on the EDC? Because I think the sooner we start, the better.
Now, and you and I've talked about that, Rob, and since I do communicate with them, since I do work with them, I don't mind doing the Lake County Partners one. But here's the alternative though, is maybe like Mike, Elliot, if you because you don't know them as well, if you did want to jump in, then that would be fine too. You know what I mean? Whatever.
I would be happy to do that, Mina.
Yeah. So, I don't mind doing it because I don't communicate with them on a daily basis but that's something that I wouldn't mind if we didn't have any takers. But Michael, if you wanted to take that, it's again, for different people to get them to know, because they know Rob, they know me, Mike Sorletto. So if they wanted to meet some more people, Michael Elliott, that might be an opportunity for you too.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that.
And maybe having two isn't so bad, but like a monthly meeting, because that way, let's say, Mina, you're out of town or Mike's busy, one of you goes. But again, I agree, you got to have the village represented then and then a trustee. But again, if we're just in the circle of what's going on, we just want to be on the short list. And Ron Lance, we'll see in the information. Barbara Purcell is in a new role, so Ron Lance would be the person that he didn't know what CFI was. He says, no, I'd love to learn more about that, because we get questions and people come to us all the time. So the sooner we do that, I think the better we'll be. But I don't know if I think he's new to his role, but he didn't know much about what was going on in Long Grove. And the more we can start to have dialogue, I think good things will come of that.
So an action item would be to report next time when the meeting is set up, to have Mike sit down or have a phone conference with.
Well, maybe meet Mina and Mike, maybe just get on a monthly schedule. Ron Lance said he's glad to do it. It's just a matter of somebody do it. But again, I think you got to have the village representative and a trustee. You got to have all three. And I don't think we need a ton of centers of influence. Again, they're a big one, because I think they see a lot of stuff, I think. And I think the Restaurant Brokers Association, same thing, is you don't want to just have the EDC. You need a trustee and somebody from the village, along with maybe one or two EDC members, and they should be different people. But I think if we start doing this, because a list is just a list, we want vetted opportunities where people have shown interest in coming to the area, not just a list of, here's 100 restaurants or entertainment centers. So if we start to do that, we'll start playing in the right traffic, I think.
Mike, you and I can maybe trade times to maybe get on a call with Rob.
I'll give you a call offline, Mina, or shoot you a quick email, and we can have a quick 15-minute planning call.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Who wants? So that's awesome. Thank you. So who would want to do the restaurants?
I'm not hearing any volunteers.
Anybody? I would think Dr. Levin, I'll speak for him. I talked to him a few weeks ago. He sold his house. I don't know, did I tell everybody this? So he's been busy at work, but he sold his house, and he's been living in Lincoln Park with his wife, and he has a son that lives there. So he says, Rob, I'm not dropping off. I just haven't had time to breathe between moving their houses. I think it's been sold, but they are doing some work. So he just has a lot going on. So it's not that he's not involved, but maybe him. But is there anybody that would like to do the restaurant? Maybe just, I think now there's Zoom calls, but like Pam, I don't know if you have any interest in the restaurant, or Erwin, but just trying to get our face in front of these real estate brokers on their monthly meeting.
Do you have the contact information, Rob? If you send it to me, I'll make it a point to find my way to the meeting.
Okay. And anybody else want to be involved with the restaurants?
Roger, I'll work with you.
Okay. I'll find out what it is. I'll let you know, and we'll both plan on sticking our.
No, we have to join to be members, so that there is a $400 membership fee. I think it's an annual fee. So that's something, I know we got Bill and Denise and David on here, but I don't know if we have the budget to go do that, but we would have to join to be active members. So I just want to be clear there. But I think I said, so I think it's, Libertyville's done a lot of it. I think Heather Rose said they've been pretty involved. It's helped them a lot to get connected with some pretty good folks. So I think it's a good thing, but I don't know if the village wants to spend the money that way.
Well, then let Pam and I evaluate and put together an argument to present to the trustees, saying this is why we think this would be a very worthwhile way to spend village money.
Perfect.
Could I add a third center of influence on there? And I'm glad to volunteer to do this. What about contacting local banks in our area and lawyers? There's a lot of people who go into their bank and say, hey, I'm thinking of starting a business. Would you give me a loan? How does it work? And the same thing with lawyers. And maybe, again, I'm happy with anyone who wants to join me or one of the trustees to make you develop a targeted list to become closer to some of the bankers and lawyers here. Hopefully they can refer some people to Long Grove that are thinking of opening a business. Thoughts?
I'd work on that with you, Erwin. It's Rob. I'd work on that. I think that's a great idea. Because, you're right, not just opening a business, what if I'm expanding, right? If I'm, I probably, before I commit to expanding to another location, I'd go talk to my banker to say, hey, what is this going to look like for me?
Right.
I got invited into a Lake Zurich Facebook type thing for Lake Zurich businesses, where I get constant emails saying you should sign up, you should tell us more about your business, blah, 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 blah. Possibly the EDC can join as a member of this Facebook group and spread their word that way. And it would reach, there are 15 or 20 local lawyers in the group. So that'd be
Well, that's a good idea, Roger.
The more we're in front of people that are vetted, that want to say, because again, even after this pandemic, there are businesses that are expanding, but I think these are all good ideas. And then we still compile our list, but we'll get good names and again, of, places we should be spending our time. So I think those are a good start for three of, center of influence.
All right. So we got 3 groups of centers of influence. We got a dozen of us that are going to take our separate parts and come back with some status next time around. I think that's a good bit of work that we've done. And hopefully Rita and Jenny, who are listening out there, will think about what trustees might want to join us with this.
No problem.
I knew it.
Rob, I'll call you and we'll set up a time to talk.
Okay, perfect.
All right. The next item on the agenda.
One last thing, Roger.
Yes.
Just a comment from Mike. So these 3 centers of influence and where the information goes, I think where there's going to be some real synergy is when you start to connect the dots across the 3. So Rob kind of alluded to it with Jay. Jay as not only a property owner, but Jay as an EDC commissioner and looking for restaurants. You've connected all 3. So you got finance, you've got retail, So I think to the extent that you're able to trade information, and I've said this for quite some time, that a data repository where each of these groups are working from the same, repository of information, the better. And where you start keeping these notes, that's where you're really going to get, I think, a real benefit. When you begin to ping the Long Grove domiciled lawyers and bankers and that sort of thing, you may find great advocates for PPP the public-private partnership opportunities. Jerry Forsyth comes right to mind. There's a number of people that operate in 2 or 3 of these stakeholder groups that would really be good to be able to trade information between the leads in each of these 3 areas. End of comment.
couldn't agree more with that. And I think we have the shared drive, right? So we just need to be smart about how we set this up, and record the information that we're gathering. I agree.
Sounds good. Next agenda item is really gone, but just as a comment, we had some discussions about recording and making the recordings available, especially of the webinars, and the executive order that just came down last week resolved that, because under the regulations now everybody who does Zoom meetings publicly must record their meetings. Ours is being recorded and it'll be available somewhere. But moving on, the last item is the discussion item and the situation with respect to the CFI parcel and the new interest in it. Mike, what's your sense of where this is at?
Were we able to get Eric? I think Eric had offered to be on the call today, right, with the EDC?
That's what I understood, but I haven't seen any check-in from him. He had the information.
Okay. Well, anyway, I had flipped that over to you and Rob to kind of get him engaged with the group. He's more than happy to do that. I had a little over an hour discussion with him. What's really interesting about I think Weiss Development is they are specialists in repurposing. Go to the website, you get an idea of what they do. The first thing we talked about was not competing with Kemper from an office space standpoint. When I heard that, I knew we had potentially the perfect owner for this property now, because that's one of the things I've lamented from the beginning, that CFI was trying to compete with Class A business space and see. But the ideas that we talked about, and they ranged anywhere from some of the things we've been talking about over the years, community college extension campus, to the urban agriculture opportunity with some retail sprinkled in, wide variety of different ideas. So the list was fairly long. Turns out number 3 is one of the owners, or maybe founder of, and this was the VP of development that I had spent time with. What he wanted to do was meet with people individually who have been either tracking or sort of following the CFI story for quite some time. Because the one thing that they don't want to do, and this is another development theme that they have, is they typically do not pursue a rezoning of a property from its original zoning category. And the reason for that is they want the path of least resistance to a potential use. So which was another good sort of thing to hear. So it seemed like everything I heard resonated with all the things that I would think would be potential pinch points with any plans moving forward. Once they gather enough different ideas and kind of vote internally with their anticipated approaches, the idea is then to reach out and go a little bit more public with their ideas to gauge some feedback. Dave, you might want to chime in too, because he did mention that he has talked with the village too as well, relative, and I think it was more fact finding than anything else, to understand the current zoning, understand the history, and that sort of thing. But other than that, that's pretty much the end of the report. But I walked away much more glass half full relative to ideas, openness, and that sort of thing than anything else. So it was really good.
What is the current zoning? How flexible? Obviously, they have a problem if they wanted to build a 40-story office tower or whatever. But it's clearly some kind of commercial use currently, right?
This
The
is,
property, the property is zoned office. And as with some of the historical things in Long Grove, it's a little goofy. The way that it was zoned is the property itself is not zoned office, but the building is. So if you look at a zoning map, you'll see that there's a rectangle that is essentially the outline of the building that's zoned office. I have not had so much communications with them. It's been more with village planner Jim Hogue on the zoning and the history on the property. My understanding is that their uses that they've discussed with him would be in line with the uses that are allowed under the office district. And that's about the extent of my involvement with them to date.
What is the zoning on the land, Dave?
Office.
I thought that was the building.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the building, it's residential.
Really?
No,
You mean,
the building
yeah,
is
single
office.
family.
The area that surrounds it is residential. The rectangle that Dave mentioned, this is Jim, is
Yes.
office, and then it's surrounded by R1 property that is not part of the office. So
And
the
it's not-
building
it's
really,
not-
the building is the only part that's zoned O. Everything else carries the R1 residential zoning district.
So all the business next to the nursery is residential?
You mean the office space there?
No, I mean like Fiore property, the part that goes along the Fiore nursery.
Well,
That gets crazy because part of that's in the county, part of that's in Killdeer, part of that is ours. I'm not exactly sure which parcel you're referring to, but when you get kind of west of the 53 extension right-of-way, that property is actually in the county.
Oh,
I thought what Dave was saying was that the building has one zone, it has one specific zone, and the land it sits on has another type of zoning. Is that what you were saying, Dave, or did I misunderstand what you were saying?
Well, the zoning goes with the land,
Oh,
but the land that
okay.
is essentially the building is zoned office,
Yeah.
and the land that is surrounding the building is residential.
Oh, I see what,
That's
okay,
correct.
all right. I misunderstood. I thought,
It's almost like an overlay district. If you think of it that way, you've got this rectangle of office that's
yeah,
sitting on top of the residential.
I got it. I understand. Okay, thanks.
and isn't that the only O zoned parcel in the village?
Correct.
Okay.
The only
There
other
is-
thing that we have
there you
close to it is office research down on
Right.
Fremont Way, south of 53.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Hey, did you all get the report that Village Planner Hogue sent to Roger and the EDC members on that property in the background?
I don't know how far it's circulated. I did not read it on.
Got it. Yeah, because Jim did a nice job of just explaining the history of what happened there, and all this. Some of that is in there. There's no diagram of how it's zoned, but it talks about it.
Well, are they interested in repurposing anything other than that building for office? I mean, are they interested in doing anything with the surrounding land?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was the conversation, at least the conversation I had with the VP of development, and he represented that he was reflecting essentially the theme of development for the portfolio is it is wide open. We talked about, like I said, we talked about extension campus, we talked about light retail, we talked about, and the reason why their approach is primarily go with the zoning that is currently, a shared office space was another idea. The reason why they go with the current zoning is they don't want to upset the environs. They don't want to upset, how it's been used in the past, if that's the case. if they see a very clear, non-resistant path to something that the village and the residents collectively believes is the best thing since sliced bread moving forward, it involves a zone change, they'll pursue it. But their idea is they don't want to go where they're not wanted, essentially. Like we used to say to the Tollway Commission, 2 or 3 times a month when they're building 53, don't go where you're not wanted. These people are really open with their idea funnel, and it does appear as though they want to move, thoughtfully and deliberately forward to make sure that it's what the village wants.
This is Rob. This is directed to Mina and Mike. Would it make sense to introduce Lake County Partners to these new owners? Because my guess is they don't know each other, and it probably would be a good introduction.
I think it would. One of the things that we talked about with any kind of shared office space, we talked a little bit biomedical and healthcare related as one of the themes. Second was education, that sort of thing. Third was technology. Landing anchor clients clearly would be in their best interest if that, and that's another difference between this group, this investment group, and the past. The past owners wanted to see, what is it? I forget the total square footage, 215,000 square feet. They wanted to see, 50 or 60 or 70% tenant before they would invest the cost of the build out, the clean up, the security, the grounds and all that stuff. So they wanted to basically have the eggs in the basket before they were gonna make a move. These guys don't appear that way. These guys appear as though they'll make the investment to get it to the point where it's leasable, rentable, and attractive. But they clearly, as part of their investment theme, want to make sure that they have a clear line of sight to potential tenants. So short answer, Rob, absolutely. And by the way, Lake County Partners was copied on the BCC list for several of my emails that talked about, the ideas that we've already, run through with the CFI guy. So they are already aware of, the availability of the property and some of the potential intended uses.
Well, Mike, did I hear you right? They want to talk to more individuals from the village, and kind of, one-on-one feel for the temperature of the village about.
Yeah, sure. His original email went out, I think, to 5, 6, 7 different people that had been part of CFI discussions over the last couple of years. For example, though, I didn't see Rita's name on there, so I definitely said, you need to talk to Rita. She's walked the space, probably 17 times, has a bunch of great ideas. So you want to make sure that you begin to tether into the trustee base too as well. So he's open to suggestions of people to talk to even, I think.
If he wants to hear from people who definitely want to develop and to be flexible, Rob and Erwin came to my mind. How the two of you feel about trying to set up some kind of a one-on-one phone conference?
Do you have an invitation to today's meeting? How to log on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine he knows how to do Zoom, but if Rob and Roger, if you weren't able to connect with him directly prior to now, maybe that'll be the first actions, making sure that he's teed up for the next meeting to talk a little bit about what they're trying to do.
All right.
I think that would be good. That was what I was trying to do for today.
I'll go to work and see if we can't get him in-house next Tuesday.
And just, Bill asked earlier if we'd seen the memo from Jim Hogue, which is very well written. Denise did send that email to all of us, I believe, but it was on June 9th, and it was just a Word document of the general background of the CFI. And it gives a very good history. So anyone that prior to having the call should read that because it really is helpful.
Is that something that somebody can forward to me?
Mike,
Sure.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to read it. Maybe you already did and I missed it. That could be.
So Roger and Rob, we're going to tee up Eric for the next meeting, and
We'll both place calls and we'll both see if we can't make sure that he knows how to get in and that we help him get in and come and talk to us.
okay.
Okay, what's up next?
That's the end of our agenda formally, to talk about CFI and where it's going and where we could make it develop. Beyond that, we're up to new business. Anybody? New business?
I'll bring it up. So hopefully, Bill, are you still on the line? Bill Jacob?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So Jenny, can you, I think you guys have a meeting tonight. Can we bring up Metro Strategies and the opportunity to maybe work with them if we think it makes sense? Mike Starrett and I talked to a bunch of trustees, some of your fellow trustees. And again, it's not to duplicate effort. It's more to complement what's been going on, to say, does it make sense to use them in certain cases where they're going to find additional opportunities that maybe we wouldn't find on our own? So is there a way you could maybe bring that up to tonight's meeting, to put it on the next meeting agenda, and we can get Metro on the phone like we did last time with Eric, whatever needs to be done. But I think we got an opportunity in front of us if we choose to work with them.
Bill, this is Jenny. I'm sorry. I'm a little quiet this morning. I'm not feeling well. But it won't be on the agenda tonight. I have reached out to a lot of the trustees and I've talked to Bill, and the consensus was that we didn't think we had the votes to approve Metro at this point, because we're making progress on some of the other grants. And because of the financial situation in the village, I think we're kind of tightening the belt. I will reach out again and see if there's movement and that interest. Or maybe I'll.
You know, Jenny, maybe what we need to do is isolate, the projects that we would go forward with them. As you're saying, we have made progress with, and I don't know, we'll see what happens. We don't know yet, but we've at least, sent an application forward for a couple of the targeted projects, being the connection with public, with municipal, or Lake Michigan Water with the Buffalo Grove connection, and resurfacing on Cuba Road. We've gone forward with those applications, but we haven't yet on the bike path. So maybe if we were to target something specific and negotiate with Metro for a better fee, just for that one project, maybe that would make it more workable for the village, kind of target it down to one or two things that we've yet to do. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, and I know Rita had requested, she wants to know, really we're looking for pretty much 100% funded grants because we don't have even 20% for a lot of these. And I think Rita would like to know what percentage of the grants that they're getting are 100% funded. Like, what is our success rate of going for these? Like, what sort of investment are we going to get back from, this initial Metro Strategies?
And maybe that's what we put in the description. Again, I think if we tell them all that, it's not just percentage, but make sure they know that, hey, we only want to go after grants that are non-matching. We just tell them that and say, is that feasible? They'll let us know.
I think that might make it more interesting to the board if that was, I don't know if somebody wants to reach out to Metro and target it more to the paths and make it very clear we're only looking at 100% funded
Yeah, well, I mean, the thought there is that maybe we could get, we can negotiate a better price if we're just looking for one thing. And, if it is 100% funded, then we can kind of narrow it down to something that might be more, workable for us.
And I can reach out to them. I'll give them a call. But keep in mind, I don't know who was on that call when they presented at the board meeting. They got 100% non-matching $3 million for Western Springs. It's 5 different, levels, from the federal, regional, all that. Now there was a cost to, I don't know what they, had to pay Metro, meaning Western Springs, but $3 million ain't bad in terms of non-matching.
Yeah, well, Rob, would you reach out to them and see about, specifically working on that one item and, getting us 100% funding from whatever sources there are available. And, with something limited like that, if their fee is less than maybe the initial fee they presented, because we were talking about, these 3 or 4 larger projects. I think we've kind of ticked off a few. So let's focus on that bike path and, see what they think they can do for us for, finding 100% funding from different sources. And
okay,
maybe that's the way to approach it with the board, because then it's, it's something that might be more realistic, might be workable for us and more affordable.
Who do I have them, because I don't have all the specifics on the bike path. Who would I have them talk to from the village that knows all the specifics on what we're trying to get accomplished there?
Bobby?
No, Rita is the pathway liaison, pathway committee liaison. So, Rita, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was sending an email. Sorry.
Okay, so Rita, I'll circle back with you. We'll get mentored just to explore it, right? And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Don't do it. But if we can give them the specifics of what we're looking for, and they can help us again find monies that we wouldn't find on our own, it's probably not a bad use of resources.
Correct. My other question, which I have asked half a dozen times, is I believe that the suggested amount of investment is $6,000. My question is, what does $6,000 buy?
Well, Rita, I was suggesting, Rita, this is Pam. I was suggesting we narrow it down. I think they said 6,000, but we were talking about a range of projects, a few of them of which we've already applied for grants. I think with those, we just wait and see how that works out. I'm thinking that we get their fee down, because I'm thinking we say to them, what about just working up on the bike path project and maybe narrowing their fee down to 2,000, because it may be a third of what they had proposed to us, but it was for things we've already applied for. So I'm thinking maybe we go back and say maybe 2,000 to 3,000 with them and limit it to the bike path, and give them parameters like 100% funding, give them specifics on the project. So that's where we need that from you, Rita. If we could get some specifics, then Rob can go back to them and we'll negotiate a better fee. I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
And I think that's a reasonable endeavor. My business question is, regardless of the amount of money, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, given what we are interested in, which is 100% funding, is $2,000 such a minimal amount of money? Is 2,000 ridiculous because it's probably realistically going to be 7,500? In other words, why flush $2,000 if a reasonable sum for that task would be X? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I'll call you, Rita. We'll figure out a way to connect on that. But I agree with you. We got to give us a tight range of what we're looking at. I mean, obviously they can't guarantee that they get grants, but what are we looking at? Here's the other thing. I'll play devil's advocate. Let's say it's $2,000 and you don't get anything for it, right? You don't get no grants. That's a risk you take, right? That's always in the back of my mind. But what's your success rate, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a business calculation, but it may be a risk that we're willing to take because, you know, we've already spent some hours on some groundwork finding this. You know, Eric helped us find Metro properties, and he's had a lot of success with them. And, you know, we've kind of fleshed that out as well as, you know, finding out what they do. Now, if we can limit our ask, so we're likely to get something from them, I do think it's a worthwhile expenditure of time, but I think we have to make our case then to the board.
Yeah, and maybe there's such a thing. Yep, succession fees, right? If you're successful, then you get a bonus, right? We're willing to do something like that, right? So we'll still pay you. We know there's a cost, but if we get that $100,000 grant, here's what you get for that, right? You get an incentive. So I'll reach out to Rita. We can call them together and just find out. But again, I know, yeah.
And Rita, I think it would be good to pursue it further. You know, we can, you know, if you could talk with Rob and we can kind of flesh out what this project is. Because I think the idea of the bike path is, you know, if that really puts a nice stamp on what we're trying to do with the village, you know, that we're trying to come up with things that enhance our image as a destination, which I think we're doing a really good job. I mean, that's another prong of this whole thing, you know, with our activities to, you know, make the village even more attractive as a destination, and, you know, other things will flow from that.
It sounds like we're well decided on the fact that Rob and whoever else is going to go back, try and fine tune the thing. And in the meantime, we're not at a point where we're going to go with the village board just yet. So next meeting, let's get a report back about how we're doing with getting a more focused price from the consultant. Does that cover it?
Yes.
All right. I've got one last item, and I just kind of popped in my head, which is the water business. We've worked on and off with, you know, getting grants and all this kind of business. And there's a public meeting tonight where there's going to be a vote about going forward with getting the Lake Michigan water. I thought it would be a no-brainer, but I'm getting the sense there might be some pushback. Rita, Jenny, have any sense of?
The vote tonight has to do with requesting grant money, and having an agreement in place with Buffalo Grove is a requirement. Well, we get extra points for the grant application if we have an agreement in place with Buffalo Grove. That's all the vote tonight is about, to the best of my knowledge. We're not voting on breaking ground. We're not voting on engineering studies. This has to do with obtaining a grant.
When I was listening last Tuesday night, it sounded like several trustees were skeptical about the whole idea of bringing in Lake Michigan water because of the cost and the cost benefit ratios. And I just think that my understanding is that if you don't get in line and get Lake Michigan water, the allocations run out. So jumping in earlier is better for you.
So this is Mina, and so I think we were able to provide enough. So totally echo what Rita said, that a lot of what we have to do tonight is more required by the application requirements. So we have to have very specific dates related to public hearing notices and resolutions approving, quote unquote, like kind of moving forward with this. If we get the grant money, and everything is contingent on if we get 100% of the grant money, well, 100% less $10,001, but which was another thing that gave us more points. But from the Roger, what you were talking about, the cost benefit kind of ratio, we were able to, since it did not affect any residents, or, you know, because it was all businesses per se, we were able to calculate based on using public information in the public domain, as well as other trusted sources such as permit applications for businesses, we were able to get to a good number, which will be, it's actually in our application already, but we use the total number of people typically served, and then we ratcheted it down by a percentage to be more conservative as to actual patrons served, since all of the businesses right now, people affected other than the senior assisted living facility. So I think we came to a really good calculation that I think dispels it down to, I think it was like $7 and change per person from the total of people served. I think we're gonna briefly touch upon something like that, and hopefully that'll, overcome some of the questions. And I think some of the questions are valid from a, you have to make the ask of why we're doing this and how and who it serves. If it was going to be a cost benefit of like $50,000 per person, that doesn't make any sense. But if it serves more people, I think that was kind of I think it's more of an economic impact question personally, which is how we addressed it that way when I was doing some calculations. So, and I can walk through some of that because I'll be on the call tonight too, kind of talking about the grant application itself.
My real question was, would it be helpful to have more members of our commission be on the phone tonight when they're asking public comments and say, we think it's a good idea, blah, blah, blah.
That's always helpful personally, but.
So consider everybody invited.
But that's assuming, that people really are going to go against us. I think hopefully it's more of they're just asking the question because it has to be asked from a public, as a resident of the state of Illinois and as a resident of Village of Long Grove perspective, maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing, hopefully, if you could be on the call, that's real helpful. Yeah, I think you're right. In terms of the agenda item, it's basically just to fulfill the requirements, the application requirements in order to go forward with the grant. So, I would think it's more of a pro forma thing, in terms of, just doing what we need to do to go forward with the grant. The agreement with Buffalo Grove, and we do have that agreement to approve that and to approve, noticing up this application.
Did that get approved last night by Buffalo Grove? Does anyone know, Dave?
I have not received anything yet from them. And just to build on what everyone is saying here, so the application does not require a public hearing unless there are local funds that are going to be contributed toward the project. In order to maximize our points, but yet minimize potential village contribution, the grant committee came up with a suggestion that the village contribute $10,000 toward the project if the project, the grant is awarded and we end up moving forward with it. So if it were not for the village's planned contribution, there would not be a public hearing. And if the village board chose not to include a local participation number in it, the grant application could be changed. It would be, I think, a reduction in 2 or 3 points in our scoring. The agreement with Buffalo Grove is an agreement to work on an agreement. The details of the agreement will come out assuming that we are successful in our application for the $3 million grant. And there's a lot of details that we have, but there's a lot of details that we just don't have yet because we're not at that point yet. If the grant is awarded, then there's going to be a number of other decisions by the village on engineering, design, whether or not to even proceed with the agreement with Buffalo Grove, accept the grant once we know what the grant terms are. But it's very much at the early end of the process and hoping to get our place in line for for some funding for the project.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that, Dave. That's very helpful. So, in other words, it's not necessarily required that we have a hearing or that, we get any specific approvals at this point, but to make our application to get additional points to make it more likely that we will get the grant, we're putting forward the idea that we have an intergovernmental agreement with Buffalo Grove, and at this point, if they approve it, it's just an agreement to go forward and talk with us and more formalize the agreement with them about how we're going to do the connection. I see. And the idea of the $10,000, that's not necessarily required either for us to go forward with the application, but it gives us some additional points, which would make it more likely that we would get that, right? Get the grant.
Correct. We anticipate it's going to be a very competitive process. So obviously having a higher scoring project rather than that, 2 points may not sound like a lot, but if 2 points makes the difference of whether or not we are successful in the grant application, just to suggest spending $10,000 and one in return for $2.9 million made sense to the grant committee to make that recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I think that will be really helpful to have that made clear, that again, that contribution on the part of Long Grove will help us in terms of our point. And talking about a cost-benefit analysis, that really, that's quite good.
Hey, Dave, this is Rob. Would it make sense to add Metro Strategies? Do you want any help with this water project? Is that a proposal from them? Because again, if our odds are 70% of getting it, they can help us get to 90. Is it worth exploring that and seeing if they can help us with this as well?
I really don't think so, because we've already completed the application, and I don't believe that would mean that we would get any more potential points than what we've already scored.
Okay, so yeah, I was curious. Yeah, where you're at. Okay. Yep.
All of these grants are, the prioritization are on areas of the state, downstate in particular, but areas of the state that have severe economic challenges. So right out of the gate, we are at a disadvantage just because of the economics of Long Grove. But even with that, I want to say that we were scoring in the 70s range for the Lake Michigan grant for the fast track $1 million grant for Cuba Road. We were scoring in the 80s. And 80, at least for the fast track, was the first hurdle to get over to be part of the first group that the state was recommending for funding. We don't have that same kind of guidance on the $3 million Lake Michigan grant. But we're very happy with the fact that we are scoring in that range. But it's all going to depend on what's our competition.
And I think the grant committee that worked on this was just actually really, I think we were pretty conservative with our scoring when we were scoring all of them, which is why we chose to pursue the specific grants for the specific types of programs that we did. That I think hopefully we have a pretty good chance of getting both of these grants, in which case, the village, if we can get both of these grants, which in essence, costs upwards of almost $4.5 million, the fact that if we can get them all almost funded except for $10,001, I think is pretty amazing. And so we'll keep our fingers crossed. With this grant, if we can get one or both of these grants, I think if anything, the trustees at that point, the appetite to get more grant funding, I think helps us in our favor for future grant, ahead of a Metro Strategies. But I think we need to win one now, at least get on first base for them to see kind of the benefit of any future grant asks personally.
Yes. So I got you, but you can't associate Metro with this. Metro didn't help us. So I know what you're saying, but this is just getting grants, and grants are a good thing, but we've yet to test Metro. So at some point, this is not a good benchmark for that, I don't think, but.
But what I was saying, Rob, is, with regard to the 2 grants that we've already applied for, or we're in the process of applying for, we're meeting the deadlines that have been set for the state. So I think those are kind of done deals in that sense. I don't think at this point Metro can add much to it, but, something like, giving them a test case like this bike path might be a good idea, particularly.
Yes, yeah, exactly. See how they do. And
yes,
trust me, if we can do it on our own and we don't need their help, I'm all for it. But again, if they give us that extra added benefit, just like Mike's story about, I'm pretty sure Mike Sarleva knows how to fish and his family knows how to fish, but when you hire the experts, it's amazing what it can do. So I get it, but I think, like Nina said, I think this is great we're doing all this, because it will greatly change the opportunities that our town's going to have if we do this stuff.
Oh yeah, Rob, and I think Dave, the whole team did a great job, Jim and Jeff, in specifically meeting these state, very tight deadlines here, and they are competitive. So we'll see how that all works out, but the effort was put in, and I think hopefully we'll derive the benefit from it. But I think for Metro, maybe the test case may be this bike path, because that would put the icing on the cake for us. And maybe you're right, make the village more inclined to work towards these grants, if we're having this success and working through different avenues.
Rob, I'll send to you there were a number of projects that the board considered at the front end when the state announced all these grants. And one of those was the Old McHenry Road path. So I'll send you that summary, and feel free to share that with Metro. And if there's any other supporting information that we can help and provide that help them to be able to better define a proposal, just let me know.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Hey, the other thing, I know we're going over time, but I talked to, I think, Bill yesterday, but do we need to, meaning the EDC, do we need to get our working list of projects? When do we need to have that into the trustees? When is your fiscal year end again?
Well, we're in unusual times, right? So our fiscal year actually began May 1, but,
okay.
I think any time that comes in is something that would be appreciated by the board, and I think it would be helpful. So I wouldn't be so concerned about us being in the new fiscal year, just whenever you're able to pull it together.
Okay, and just to have it like in a Word or Excel, I mean, just
Sure.
a brief outline of things that we want to get accomplished, monies we'd like to get. That's really what this is, right? What do you guys just call it, a working list of projects, basically?
Yep.
Okay. So that's something we should probably get going, so the trustees, so we're all on the same page, and yeah, we're doing this. Okay.
Anything?
We lost Roger, right? So,
No, I'm here. I'm
Oh,
long
good.
rope.
Yay.
Can I bring one more up that Pam did a great
Myself.
job a few weeks ago? Because I know we cover a lot of ground on these calls. So do you remember when we talked about Friedman and Associates in Chicago, and Pam had a great idea saying, hey, if we picked the 3, again, I know the village doesn't own a lot of land, but if we picked the 3 major parcels, whether it be the South 15, whatever you guys want to pick, but it doesn't cost us anything to get a proposal from Friedman, but at least just to start to move forward with them to say, what does that look like? What would they charge us? What could they do for us? So is everyone still open to at least trying to move forward with that? And if we don't, then, we cut bait. But everything I heard from Eric, and Eric knows Friedman pretty well, he said, Rob, they're amazing at what they do. And again, I want to be careful not to step on toes of BDI or anybody else, but I don't think it would hurt for us to get specific proposals, and maybe we could do this as a private-public partnership, meaning if some of these people that own these land parcels, if they knew that we could, work all together to really develop these areas nicely, it'd probably be a win-win for everybody, I think.
It's a good idea concept, but we've heard a number of times now that the village's purse is closed, at least for now. So, you know, to the extent that we can get more information out of these people without having to give them any money, that's great. But in terms of going forward, yeah, I think we've done what we can.
Well, let me ask you a question. I guess I'll be there.
Hey, Rob, this is Earl. I've got to drop off. So you guys could finish. Is there anything, Roger, you need from me?
I've got a list here, and there's something you're doing for next meeting, but yeah, no, we're good.
The bankers and the lawyers, so Erwin will talk.
Yeah.
So I'll just take this one comment because I think just to be respectful of time. So my thought, Roger, is, I mean, we could drop off. Does it hurt us to get specifics of what we, and I want Dave and Bill's sort of perspective. Let's pretend that they put specific, you know, all we've done is gotten just a very broad, here's what we do. We said for specific projects, what would it cost? And again, I get that there's not budget money, but if they said, hey, if we did this, we could bring $500,000 of reoccurring revenue into your municipality, maybe it looks a little different, I guess. And so that's where I think, you know, I don't want to waste time on something we don't want to do, but I just think there's merit to all this. If we're, you know, if we really want to partner, I mean, again, I wish Eric was on this call because he knows Freedman better than I do, but he said, Rob, they're one of the best I've ever seen, not just regionally, but nationally. They're really good. They work with a lot of municipalities. So I'm a fan of, I think it would behoove us to work with them, but if we don't want to, we shouldn't put the effort into it.
So Rob, I echo that Freedman is probably, you know, again, we're on a Diet Coke budget, and that's a champagne kind of ask. And it's not just any champagne. I'm talking, it's a Dom Perignon kind of ask. And so I'd say, I really think the appetite isn't there at all right now. I mean, given the state of the economy, or fiscal, I'm just saying, like, I'm pretty sure we're going to get pushback. And I think that this is one battle I think we should personally hold off on until we get, I mean, we're broker than broke at this point, I think. And I think that any more ask, I think it's good to still maintain conversations with SB Freedman, because again, I agree with you. In order to get the South 15 and the CFIs and these, like, we need a very strategic plan for each of those properties, because they're not going to sell themselves because they've languished for the last 20 years. So I think, yes, I think SB Freedman is definitely a source that can help us pinpoint very specific types of activities and projects that can go on each of those parcels. I just don't think we have the monies or the appetite or the wherewithal right now for the board. We're not going to get any traction. So for me, I'd rather fight my battles where I know we are going to get traction. And I don't think that's one of them right now, personally speaking.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good feedback. I was thinking, we keep thinking the village has to pay for it. I think that new owners of CFI, maybe if they knew who Freedman was. So I don't know that this was always going to be on the village's dime. I was thinking if we did it in coordination. Yeah, so this wasn't, I was trying to say if we give them specific, and I talked to Steve about it. He says, no, that's done. We do that all the time. But the village still has to coordinate the effort. No, this wasn't about putting it on the dime of the village. I mean, they'd maybe have to participate, but we don't know what it looks like. But no, this would get CFI and saying, hey, if you connect us with them and they help us do this, I guarantee you the new owners of CFI want, even though they're developers, if they thought they could get a benefit of working with Freedman or whoever owns the South 15. So no, I would say the majority of this would not be on the village's dime.
I think, and maybe that's for further discussion from an EDC perspective, just to kind of flesh out some of that. But I think an introduction might be, because, you know, Weiss Properties, it looks like they're more East Coast based. You know, from a local perspective, SB Freedman is a very good local company. So I think that is a good introduction to make, kind of like the introduction for them to Lake County Partners. So yeah, I think those are benefits. I was thinking that we're not going to, because you kept bringing up the trustees, I was like, I don't think we're going to get them to move, but I think again.
No, yeah, I wasn't trying to, you're right. I'm not, when we're questioning doing Metro stuff, why would I bring this into this? No, somebody else would be paying for it, but we can leave it alone for now. We got a lot of moving pieces. Eric spoke so highly. He's like, Rob, every project I worked on was just, they just knocked the ball. I mean, they're just so good at what they do. And I know there's a cost, but again, if we're really serious about making significant change and really positive change, I just think we need partners like that. That's just me. And because I just think it'll get us there quicker, more
Right.
efficiently, but there's a
You're
cost
right.
to it.
No, you're right. I mean, and I think you're definitely trying to head the EDC in the right direction from where we need to be and where we're going. So I think those are, yeah, you're definitely trying to drive the boat forward, and I totally commend you, Rob. So maybe that's
You
something
guys
that we
you
can.
can criticize me. Some of these ideas are probably crazy, but I just think,
I
yeah.
personally think, Rob, that your ideas are really good and you're very hopeful, which is, again, we always need glass half full. So I think that's something maybe we talk about at another EDC meeting and kind of flesh it out. And then, you know, figure out the next, especially since we're going so far over, and I do have to get off too. So.
No, I agree. Everybody, thank you for doing that. Yeah, I agree. We just don't want to waste our time on stuff that we're not going to do, right? If we're not going to do it or we're not serious, it's just better to just talk about it and say, let's move on. So everything you say, Mina, makes complete sense. If we're not going to do it, let's no need to waste energy.
Thanks.
Good all round. Anything else?
No, sir.
Motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
Under the new regulations, we have to have a roll call vote. So, Rob? Aye or nay? This is a motion to adjourn, and I'm looking for an aye or a nay vote. So, Rob, what's your vote?
My vote is aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Mina?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And Erwin's gone. So the motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all
Thanks
for
all.
a lot of deep thought.
Thanks, everybody.
Hopefully we'll see you tonight.